Hello, SpongeX here. In this review, I'm going to go over the shorts featured in the Walt Disney Treasures DVD for Disney Rarities. This is a collection of the standalone theatrical shorts from Disney's life that weren't part of the Mickey and Friends or Silly Symphony lineup. I do think there are a few shorts missing from this collection, though. Many of the original Alice comedies are not included. Not even the shorts that were featured on the Oswald collection make a return, and I also remember there was a short about a light blue car. Heck, even the Once Upon a Studio short confirmed that I didn't hallucinate this character. So, by the way, Once Upon a Studio, that was awesome. Seriously, watch it on Disney Plus if you haven't yet. Because these shorts don't have the headliners of being a Mickey or Silly Symphony cartoon, they definitely make these some of the most obscure Disney shorts out there, but not all of them are bad. Anyways, let's get started. Oh, by the way, I'm not reviewing Chicken Little because I already reviewed it in my Daily Motion review for the Walt Disney on the Front Lines DVD. The first one on here is one of Walt's first public release animated shorts, the first in the Alice comedies, Alice's Wonderland. In this cartoon, loosely based on Lewis Carroll's Alice in Wonderland series, we see a fantasy of a girl named Alice as she witnesses Walt Disney and his crew bringing cartoons to life. I think this is the only animated short where Walt Disney makes a physical appearance. Later that night, Alice falls asleep and dreams of being in a cartoon world, as many cartoon animals celebrate her arrival. A bunch of lions break out and chase Alice around until Alice abruptly wakes up, and the short ends. I'm aware that this cartoon has historic significance, being a cartoon that predates both Oswald and Mickey Mouse, and combining live action with animation. But I overall honestly do not care for these Alice cartoons. They are just too primitive to keep me entertained. The animation looks terrible, and even for a silent cartoon, the dialogue feels awkward. Old cartoons really had pacing issues. Somehow they were either too slow or too fast at the same time, and the animation for Disney Studio still had a very long way to go. Even the old Mickey and Oswald cartoons had better animation than these stiff and choppy animation loops. I honestly don't see myself watching any of these Alice shorts ever again. 2 out of 10. Alice's Wild West Show. The short features Alice and a couple of kids trying to pull on stage performances, but a group of bullies show up to heckle the show. Alice decides to try entertaining the audience by enacting a tall tale fantasy of her in a cartoony western setting. What's a girl her age doing, smoking? Really nothing happens. Everyone in the saloon gets knocked out, and Alice chases and stops a thief from stealing a safe. Cut back to reality, and the audience was not impressed, as the bullies start throwing food at Alice. Wow, an audience reaction that exaggerates how I felt about the whole story. The short ends with Alice angrily chasing the bullies out of the show, and she ends up beating up the fat ringleader of the troupe. This one is slightly funnier than the last one, but still a bore overall. 2 out of 10. Alice Gets in Dutch. As Alice gets in trouble in class, she tries passing the time by daydreaming in her cartoon wonderland. Alice is shown having fun with animals playing music, only for a cartoon parody of her teacher to show up and ruin their fun. And yep, it's another chase sequence. The short breaks into a war sequence, and the short abruptly ends with Alice falling out of her chair in real life. So far, this is the worst Alice short I've seen so far. 2 out of 10. Alice's Eggplant. Alice and Julius run a chicken farm. A Russian chicken tricks the other chickens into going on strike, and we get the biggest body count of abortions I've ever seen in a cartoon. Alice tries settling things by hosting a cockfight, with one egg as admission to enter. What is even going on in this? Alice and Julius drive off as more unborn chickens die in the process. This short was just a whole bunch of nothing. 2 out of 10. Alice in the Jungle. Nothing happens in this, just a bunch of random gags with jungle animals. Alice once again gets chased by lions, that's it. 1 out of 10. Alice's Mysterious Mystery. Oh my god, this title's a joke. You see this bear character? That was apparently Pete from the Mickey Mouse series. Before his reintroduction in Steamboat Willie, Pete was a bear in the Alice shorts along with the Oswald shorts. In this cartoon, Pete is a dog catcher and kidnaps a bunch of dogs from a dog school and ends up sending them to a sausage factory. Alice and Julius are on the case to solve this mystery. You know, it's not much of a mystery if we already know who did it from the start. The short has some dark imagery as we see a dog get executed into a rope of sausage links. The short abruptly ends with Alice freeing the dogs as they chase after Pete. 1 out of 10. Alice the Whaler. Another load of nothing. Alice is on a ship with other animals. We see an angry chef, and the short abruptly ends with a whale getting harpooned and dragging Alice's ship away. 1 out of 10, and that was the last Alice short in this collection. Thank God. It took nearly 2 decades for Disney to make another standalone short that wasn't part of the Mickey Mouse or Silly Symphony series. So their first standalone colored short from the late 1930s was Ferdinand the Bull, a faithful retelling of the classic story of a pacifist bull who doesn't want to fight like other bulls, and just wants to sit around and smell flowers. When a bee stings him, Ferdinand goes on a rampage and catches the attention of people, who end up capturing him and forcing him to partake in a bullfight. We get some funny reactions from the Toreador as he gets insulted over the bull ignoring him, just to instead sniff the flowers that the crowd threw for him. The short ends with Ferdinand being returned home as he continues to live his days just sniffing flowers and enjoying life. It's overall a very cute and charming story, although I feel the narrator gets kind of annoying at times with how he tells it in a very patronizing way. Of course, most people are likely going to associate the story more with Blue Sky's movie adaptation of the film starring John Cena. Now, I remember seeing the film, and at first I was thinking, how can they retell such a short story and stretch it into over an hour long? But surprisingly, the movie wasn't bad. It had some funny scenes and some good drama to it. It may not technically count as a Disney remake, since Disney didn't make it, but Disney now owns the film since they bought 20th Century Fox, oddly enough. But this is one case where I actually like the movie remake better than the original short. Disney's short of Ferdinand still isn't bad, though, but there are better shorts out there. 6 out of 10. The Pelican and the Snipe. A scrap sequence from The Three Caballeros, originally meant to be part of the film's opening when Donald is watching a film about birds from South America. So just like the short about Pablo the Penguin, this short is also narrated by Sterling Holloway, a famous Disney regular known for voicing characters like Winnie the Pooh and Cod the Snake from The Jungle Book. You'll be hearing his voice a lot in the other Disney shorts in this collection as well. In this short, we're introduced to a pelican named Monty, who's constantly flying in his sleep, as his snipe friend Viddy has to keep him from flying to his death. Viddy's constant attempts to save Monty cause him to get tired in the morning, causing Monty to get angry with Viddy. One night, as Viddy attempts to stop Monty from flying off into sleep, he ties an anchor to Monty's feet to prevent him from leaving the lighthouse, only for the plan to backfire, as Monty ends up getting anchored to the bottom of the sea. Monty storms back angrily and kicks Viddy out. The following night, Monty wakes up in the middle of sleep flying and finds himself in the middle of a military plane training session, nearly getting killed. Monty realizes what Viddy was trying to do and feels horrible for kicking him out. Suddenly, Monty notices Viddy sleeping on the bullseye of the military's target practice, as Monty swoops in to save his pal. The short ends with Viddy tying a rope to Monty's foot around a pole in their lighthouse to allow him to fly around safely in circles. It's too bad this segment was cut from The Three Caballeros. It might not have added to the plot or anything, if you can even call that movie to say it has a plot, but it would have went better with other shorts about birds, though, compared to the last one with the flying donkey, which honestly felt kind of out of place. I mean, it fits with the Latin America theme, but it didn't fit with the other shorts that were clearly about birds, so I don't know. But the short was silly and had some great and colorful scenery and animation. 7 out of 10. The Brave Engineer, based on the Ballad of Casey Jones. No, not the Casey Jones from TMNT. I've honestly never heard of this story before, but it's apparently an American legend. Narrated by Jerry Colonna, the voice of the March Hare from Alice in Wonderland, this is just a silly, fast-paced musical short about an engineer named Casey trying to deliver mail to the Western America by train, before it's too late. But a lot of obstacles get in the way, including deep waters, a cow. He even has to save a woman tied to train tracks at one point.
What do you know? She-Man!
He somehow survives a railroad bombing and even gets held up by train robbers. Basically, everything that can go wrong with a train happens to Casey. As Casey tries making repairs to his train, an oncoming train is heading right towards him in the opposite direction and ends up crashing into his. Somehow, Casey survives this and ends up delivering the mail on time with just the front of his train struggling on. The short is very silly and energetic, and I have a soft spot for Freddie Moore's Disney cartoons. They were always the wackiest and most entertaining for me to watch. I enjoyed this one overall, 7 out of 10. Morris the Midget Moose, a spin-off short to the Donald Duck short series. In some Donald shorts, they introduce characters known as the Boodle Beetles, usually revolving around an old beetle telling a young beetle stories about his youth, which somehow tie into a lesson. As two young beetles try getting fruit, but are too short to reach it, their grandpa tells them the tale of Morris the Midget Moose. Gee, by that title alone, you probably will never guess what this one's about, can ya? Yep, it's a short moose who never grew full size. Obviously, because he's so short, he can't keep up with other moose, and he can't even reach the food from the trees that he needs, so... then came a time where the champion Thunderclap comes in, and all the other moose challenge him to be king of the pack. After getting defeated in embarrassment, Morris ends up finding another moose named Balsam, who also has a problem. He's a full-grown moose, but with the puniest antlers. Even Morris's antlers were bigger than his. Balsam becomes friends with Morris, and even gives him a boost to reach leaves from the trees. They notice each other's shadows when Morris sits atop Balsam, making them look like a big, scary moose. They end up teaming up to challenge Thunderclap. They hilariously scare off Thunderclap as they both get stuck in a log, making them look like one big moose monstrosity. The story ends with Thunderclap running off scared, and the Boodle Beetles work together to stand tall and get the fruit they were after. This is a simple story, but it has a decent moral about teamwork, 6 out of 10. Lambert the Sheepish Lion. I remember seeing this one a lot at Disney World back in 2003. They played the short a lot each day on the TV that the resorts had, so... Another story narrated by Sterling Holloway. This one serves as a spin-off to Dumbo, as it has the stork from Dumbo in it, also voiced by Holloway. As he delivers a baby sheep to their mothers, he accidentally delivers a lion to the last sheep, but the mother sheep doesn't care, for she grows to love the baby lion and calls him Lambert. We see Lambert get made fun of by the other sheep kids, and they taunt him with a song named after the short's title. In the future, we now see a full-grown Lambert who still gets teased by the other lambs. Or sheep, I should say now. So, one night, Lambert sees a wolf plotting to eat the sheep. Strangely enough, the wolf appears to be the same one from Peter and the Wolf, even recycling some of the same animation at times. As Lambert's mom cries for help, Lambert steps in and scares the wolf off with a lion's roar. You gotta love the Goofy Holler sound clip. The sheep revives their taunting song to now praise Lambert as a hero. Once again, it's a very simple short, very Rudolph-like in nature, but it's still a charming short with very colorful animation and silly moments. This one is available on Disney+, 7 out of 10. The Little House. I have vague memories of seeing this one late on Disney Channel back in the late 90s. Yet another short narrated by Sterling Holloway. In this short, we see a happy living house who's happy with her surroundings, along with the family she has living in her. Honestly, the look of this house kinda creeps me out. Years pass and her nice surroundings suddenly start changing as her family moves out and leaves her alone, and her surroundings get torn down and built over with concrete industrialization. The short is surprisingly dark, as we see the house get more miserable with the constant changes around her, and the cold reception from the new building she's forced to be stuck in between for years. Things keep changing for the worse as other buildings get killed by fires. She has to endure the loud noises of city life, along with witnessing demolitions of the other buildings, to make way for even bigger buildings, while everything keeps ignoring her. All of which cause depressing effects on the little house as well. The line of dialogue given as the house is being surrounded by a moving crew is very depressing to hear.
There was nothing left now. Not even hope.
Let's get it over with.
Yes, get it over with. I'm just in the way. No good to anybody. I've had a very full life for a house. And we all have to go sometime.
The short surprisingly ends on a lighter note as the house ends up not getting demolished but moved to a countryside, where a new happy family moves in and renovates her, making the house feel happier than she's ever been. Aside from the house's creepy design, this starts off as a very tame and peaceful cartoon, but it's overall very dark and depressing. It's just a morality tale, but it somehow ends on a much lighter note. The little house even makes a cameo in the Chippendales Rescue Ranger movie. Overall, it's a decent short, 6 out of 10. Adventures in Music, Melody. Yeah, you're probably looking at this and thinking, wait a minute, these are just clips from the Disney Sing-Along Songs VHSs from the 1990s. Technically, you're right, but those segments from the sing-along tapes are actually redubbed and edited clips from 2 classic Disney shorts. The first one, Adventures in Music, Melody, is an educational cartoon about melodies, as a teacher named Professor Owl tries teaching a class of birds about music. This one really stands out for using a much different art style compared to other usual Golden Age Disney animation styles. The animation seems to be Disney's attempt at trying to compete with the rise of the UPA animation style, which used simpler designs, bright colors, and little to no outlines. Sometimes the characters resemble paper cutouts. This art style was used for a lot of later Disney shorts, and most like to refer to it as the Ward Kimball art style, for it was used in many of his cartoons. Here we have Professor Owl, voiced by Bill Thompson, who is most well known as the White Rabbit from Alice in Wonderland, Droopy Dog, and Ranger J. Audubon Whittemore from the Humphrey the Bear shorts, as he teaches his students about melodies. He explains how a group of notes are what make melodies, and the many ways they can be altered. He points out how even nature makes melodies, from simple things like robins chirping, crickets chirping, or wind blowing through willow trees. I just have to point out, why did the short try sexualizing an underage student bird? What the hell, Disney? I like how this short explains how melodies can even be made from just simple things like a human speaking sentences. Here we see Professor Owl mimicking a guy's sentences and turning them into musical notes. It reminds me of those YouTube videos where pianists reenact memorable scenes from TV shows, but with piano notes instead, as they try using the notes to match like the characters' voices and patterns from TV shows. Like, I think I once saw like a Steamed Hams, but it's a piano arrangement or something that was kind of funny. Admittedly, this short is kind of sexist, as it says females are better at making melodies, as it makes a jab at how women talk too much. And then for no reason, it then cuts to a confusing scene explaining how we're born and then we die. I honestly don't know what this has anything to do with melodies. This is like the most out-of-place scene in the whole short. Next, the professor asks each student to come up and draw a picture of something we make melodies about. We get examples like love, sailing at sea, trains, cowboys, an insensitive reference to Indians. For some reason, we get 3 underage sisters singing about the wonders of motherhood. Now, this just feels uncomfortable. I mean, just imagine a bunch of first graders breaking out into this song, and maybe you'll see what I mean. The short wraps up with a musical reprise with a bunch of surreal and wacky imagery. Despite the short's outdated and awkward moments, this is a fantastic and very experimental short for Disney, trying out many different art styles and musical styles. I honestly never liked educational cartoons, but Disney knew how to make them fun, entertaining, and they just knew how to grab your attention. This short also demonstrates Ward Kimball as a very standout artist at Disney, showcasing his bizarre visions that would carry further into more shorts, and even Walt Disney's own anthology TV series, as he animated many segments that were exclusive to those TV specials. This is a very underrated Disney classic, 8 out of 10. Football Now and Then. We see a boy and his grandpa trying to settle who's better, football of today or the football of the grandpa's youth. We see a football game between caricatures of past football with, at the time, modern football. Even though I'm not a fan of sports, I really found nothing of value in the short. It's a whole lot of nothing. It's trying so hard to be fast-paced, wacky, and random, but it just doesn't land a single laugh from me. The short abruptly ends with the game being interrupted by a commercial break for a dishwasher, and the grandpa decides to forget about the whole thing and just decides to go out and buy a dishwasher. Man, even the studio got bored of this short and just abruptly ended it, so not Fred Moore's best work, 2 out of 10. Adventures in Music, Toot, Whistle, Plunk, and Boom. The second and last cartoon from the Adventures in Music series, and the first standalone short in CinemaScope. Basically an early version of what we call today widescreen. In this sequel, Professor Owl teaches about musical instruments and tries explaining how each instrument makes different sounds. The brass instruments make toots, wind instruments make whistles, strings make plunks, and drums make booms. The professor breaks into the history of how each sound was made and discovered, and how it evolved, going all the way back to caveman days and showing how they evolved over time. into the instruments we now know. After each instrument's origin is introduced and clarified, we get a musical finale of all the sounds coming together to form different symphonies of combined music, showing how these individual sounds work best when played together. And honestly, I do agree with that. I've always preferred symphonic orchestras compared to digital music and stuff like that. So, personally, I think this short is worse than the first. This one is just much slower paced. It's too repetitive, especially the scenes with the cavemen. They just drag on way too long and get rather annoying with the repetitive sounds and slow pacing. I do like the science behind how the instrument started off simple and how over time they invented and discovered different ways to make different notes by changing the size and shapes of these instruments, along with ways of playing more musical notes off the instruments instead of having to use different sizes of the same instrument. So I still like the short overall, but I found Melody a much better short. It was funnier, more energetic, and had more impressive visuals and a lot less dead empty space. The sequel just didn't grab my attention like the first one did. I'd say the only thing that's really worth noting about it is the finale, but I'm surprised they never made more educational shorts starring Professor Owl. This could have been an interesting ongoing series, but I'm not sure how much more they could have done with musical instrument subjects, but they could have evolved into further subjects, but maybe that's why they came up with Ludwig von Drake. It seems like he took over the role of Professor Owl over time, and admittedly, maybe that was for the best. I always did find Ludwig von Drake's specials a lot sillier and more entertaining. Again, this short isn't as good as the first, but it's still an okay educational short, 6 out of 10. Ben and Me. I remember being shown this in history class on an old VHS back in either the 4th or 5th grade. From what I've heard over the years, this is a very mixed short. People either love or hate this short. I know some historians hate this short for its historic inaccuracy. In a way, this short is the original Ratatouille, but instead of being about a rat trying to help a guy with cooking, it's about a mouse trying to help Benjamin Franklin. Over time, Benjamin Franklin seemed to get joked on for stealing other people's ideas and claiming them as his own, so in a way, this fantasy kind of works. The film opens up as we see people gathered around a tourist statue celebrating Benjamin Franklin's contributions to the 18th century. But on top of the statue, we see a group of mice learning about the true unsung hero who was really responsible for Benjamin's rise to fame, and that was a mouse named Amos. Yeah, it's basically just Jock from Cinderella, but now voiced by Sterling Holloway. We hear the story from Amos's memoir called Ben and Me, starting back in the winter of 1745 as Amos adventures off to try and help his poor family during desperate times. Eventually, Amos finds Benjamin's shop for printing and bookbinding. We see Ben is struggling to keep his rent, which is due in 24 hours, as he desperately needs help. Amos offers to help him in many ways. Amos helps Benjamin in inventing a steel furnace to keep the building warm, along with a chimney pipe that leads out of the chimney to let the smoke out, as Amos tries fixing Ben's 2 pairs of broken glasses. By combining the lenses from both pairs, he invents bifocals. Amos then helps Ben in revising his newspaper with the Gazette. Amos decides to go out and do some journalist work to fetch Ben real stories that will grab people's attention. Ben then rewrites Amos's words onto his paper, and the two get to printing the story, and the two become a success. Amos ends up hiding under Ben's hat to offer advice without being seen. There is no way the maker of Ratatouille is not inspired by this short. Meanwhile, Ben starts discovering electricity and wants to experiment with it. He decides to give Amos a static shock, which Amos hates so much that he threatens to leave, and Ben promises not to do it again, only to cross his fingers and lie. Ben was honestly a real dick during this point in the story, as he tricks Amos into flying a kite, to be fooled into being like a flying reporter, only to actually be using him to report the conduction of electricity from the kite he's soaring on. Admittedly, I did get a laugh out of Amos's outrage at Ben before storming off and ending their partnership.
Was it electricity?
Was it electricity? Was it electricity?
Over time, riots began over high taxes. Ben was chosen to go to England to lay his case before the king, but to no avail. Ben doesn't know what to do. One night in 1776, Ben seeks out Amos and begs him to come back and help him. Amos only agrees to come back if Ben signs an agreement. The following morning, as Ben is about to read and sign the agreement, Thomas Jefferson barges in as he's struggling to find the words for his Declaration of Independence. As Ben reads aloud Amos's agreement, it gives Jefferson the words he's looking for to finish his speech. And so the Declaration of Independence was formed, signed, and passed, and history has been set. Now, I can understand why historians might dislike this cartoon. I think it paints Ben Franklin in poor taste, but I overall enjoy this short. I feel like without Amos, this short wouldn't have grabbed the attention of younger audiences, and it would have made for a rather boring animated documentary. I loved the animation and character designs in this short, and the musical score really added to it. I can't find much to complain about in this short. Heck, Ben and Amos even appeared in Once Upon a Studio, marking one of the only few standalone short characters that actually get represented in that short. 8 out of 10. Pigs is Pigs. This is a very silly short, starring a man named Flannery who works at a railroad station in 1905. He follows every rule that he receives straight from the book, and when he receives a crate of 2 guinea pigs, he's confused for he's never heard of the creatures and automatically assumes that they are pigs. When a customer comes in to claim they're pets, Flannery claims that the guinea pigs aren't pets, for they are pigs, and tries charging the man 4 cents extra. Flannery goes through lengthy procedures to try to prove that he's right over this, and he goes through many lengthy procedures to send reports across many different departments across the world and stuff like that, just to prove that he's right about this, and just so he can get that 4 cents extra. Meanwhile, the guinea pigs keep multiplying, causing him to report back to the others again, causing the whole thing to keep growing further and further into more chaos, and finally Flannery gets the message back that it has been declared that the guinea pigs are in fact not pigs. So by the time Flannery tries to get back to the customer's address to give him his guinea pigs, he finds out the guy moved away. So Flannery tries shipping all the guinea pigs away by train. In the end, Flannery decides that from now on, when he receives an animal, he'll classify them as pets. The short is overall very fast-paced and silly. The guinea pigs were adorable, and I loved all the chaos going on. If you thought business mistakes were annoying to sort out in modern times, think how much worse they were back then, before computers and cell phones were a thing. The fact that the guinea pigs just kept multiplying just made this constant back and forth more amusing to watch. So it's not an amazing short, but still pretty amusing overall. 6 out of 10. Social Lion. I really don't care for this one. They recycled Lambert the sheepish lion's design in the short. This short features a lion that was captured and being brought back to a city zoo, but the lion breaks loose and gets lost in all the madness of city life. There's really nothing interesting or funny that happens in this short, and the animation feels very stilted and lazy coming from the Walt Disney Studio during their glory days. 3 out of 10. Hooked Bear. The first short of a spin-off to the Donald Duck shorts starring Humphrey the Bear. In some of Donald Duck's later cartoons, we were introduced to a setting where Donald was in a forest park setting with a group of bears, a bumbling park ranger, and a dim-witted hungry bear named Humphrey. Admittedly, I love the cartoons featuring Humphrey, so it made sense for him to get his own cartoons. The first short features Humphrey trying to capture fish while a bunch of park visitors are busy fishing on fishing day, and the ranger is trying to prevent Humphrey from disrupting the guest fishing experience. We get a lot of funny gags, like Humphrey settling for fish bait, only for a big fish to eat the bait, as Humphrey angrily shoos away the big fish, only to realize seconds later how stupid he was for scaring off a bigger fish in favor of such a puny little fish bait. After all of Humphrey's failed attempts to collect and eat fish, the short harshly ends with fishing season ending and hunting season beginning, as everyone starts shooting after Humphrey. It's overall a pretty funny short, 7 out of 10. Jack and Old Mac. A musical short that starts off fun and creative, but gets very repetitive the longer it drags on. The short features 2 songs back to back. Both songs have a similar phase where they're kind of repetitive in verses, so these songs are reimagined as jazz tunes. The first song is The House That Jack Built. I've never really heard of this song, but honestly, I like this short better for the first act with The House That Jack Built. Not only for somehow being shorter than the second song in this short, but mainly for how creative the visuals are. I love how all the things in the song are, like where it's the things or the creatures. I love how they're portrayed with characters built out of letters used to spell said thing or creature. And so like you see how the rat, it's actually made out of a big R, an A, and a T. That's really creative. And so, yeah, the first half was fun for sure. And then we get to the old McDonald part of the short, which takes up way too much of the short's runtime with very repetitive animation, along with a very repetitive song. So it's just not as fun to sit through as that first half. But then that second half came in, and geesh, for a 7-minute short, it shouldn't have to cause the viewer to keep checking the time. I really don't know. I thought I was going to love this short at first, but that lengthy second half kind of kills it for me. 4 out of 10. In the Bag, Humphrey Bear's second solo cartoon. In this short, the park ranger notices a bunch of litter on the park and tricks the bears into picking it up with a catchy song. But as the bears catch on to what's really going on, they drop what they're doing and start leaving. The ranger recaptures their attention by making dinner for them, but says only those who have cleaned up their stations may eat, causing all the bears to dump their litter onto Humphrey's face, causing poor Humphrey to have to try disposing all the trash by himself. We get a funny random scene where Humphrey tries burning it all, only to be halted and preached to by an eerily detailed Smokey Bear. This feels like a random millennial-type humor that was somehow packed into an old 1950s cartoon. As a last-ditch effort, Humphrey throws all the trash into a geyser, but it erupts and Humphrey is forced to clean up once again. Overall, a very typical cartoon scenario, but it still has some chuckle-worthy moments, a catchy song, and decent animation. 7 out of 10. A Cowboy Needs a Horse. Now here's a real obscure one that awoke a long-time memory. Back when I was a little kid, I remember one of the Disney sing-along song tapes featured this song from the short, and I remembered liking the song every time it played on that old tape. And so, this is a simple short of a boy peacefully dreaming he's a cowboy, and we get a simple song of what a cowboy needs if they want to keep riding along. So, in his dream, we see him pulling off many acts, like fighting off Indians. Do I have to point out every time an old cartoon does something outdated? So, we also see him stop robbers, rescue a girl from an outlaw. So, unlike most dream shorts that usually end with the hero waking up from a nightmare, that's not the case here. It's just a simple story of a boy as he keeps on dreaming about being a heroic and selfless cowboy. It's overall a pretty charming cartoon for kids. 7 out of 10. The Story of Anyburg, USA. This is a strange cartoon where motor vehicles are put on trial for all the damage and deaths they're responsible for. It's a good commentary on who's really to blame for traffic accidents, the vehicle or the careless people driving said vehicles. It's a very similar argument to gun violence. Let's face it, we all know people are really to blame for this. Many cases have proved that anything can be a dangerous weapon when put in the wrong hands. So, the short has some decent voice talents, including Hans Conroy, who played Hook in Disney's Peter Pan, as he plays the lawyer going against the cars. We even have Thurl Ravenscroft, who most people will recognize his deep voice as the voice of Tony the Tiger, or the singer of You're a Mean One, Mr. Grinch. Surprisingly, Ravenscroft's voice can be heard in many old Disney shorts and movies. The result for the trial was pretty funny, and the aftermath doesn't change a thing to prevent more accidents from happening. It's a pretty silly short overall, with a great commentary that still holds true today. 7 out of 10. The Truth About Mother Goose. A collection of 3 Mother Goose rhymes, starting off with the recitals of the rhymes being sung as playful children's songs, only to go into a deeper look and showing the dark origins behind each song, including Little Jack Horner, Mary, Mary, Quite Contrary, and London Bridge. Although I usually love Disney's old educational shorts, I found this one very boring overall. This one does go on a little longer than the average 7-minute shorts you'd get from Disney at the time, so this one felt like it just dragged on too long. Maybe if it focused more on speeding through the stories and had more than just 3 stories to tell, the short might have worked, but as it is, it's just boring and forgettable. And none of the truths behind these songs are really that interesting. It makes you just wonder, were these really worth telling in an animated form? London Bridge is the only one that seems to have any historical significance. It was basically a good cautionary tale of how not to build a bridge, I guess. So, while the others are just a whole lot of nothing. 4 out of 10. Paul Bunyan. Disney's retelling of the old American folklore legend of the world's giant lumberjack. The story opens up with Paul being found by other lumberjacks as a giant baby. What was with the nightmare scream baby Paul made? That would have had me running out of the room screaming if I saw this short as a kid. We see how the town pitched in to raise Paul to grow up to be a fine young man, and how he got his iconic pickaxe as a Christmas gift, and how he cleared out many forests for people to build new homes and resources out of lumber. Adult Paul was voiced once again by Thurl Ravenscroft. We even see how he met his pet companion, Babe the Giant Blue Ox, and similar to another American folk story, the story of John Henry, this story also has a similar conflict where Paul gets introduced to a contraption that rivals his ability at being the best at his job. So for John Henry, it was building railroads, and in this case, it is being a lumberjack. And so Paul overhears the salesman presenting an invention that can chop down trees faster than any man. So Paul challenges the man in his machine to see who can chop the most wood the fastest. While John Henry was a story where the hero won but died from exhaustion shortly after, this story ends with Paul barely losing, as he leaves ashamed, as no one has heard from him since, but it's revealed that Paul and Babe went to Alaska, where they're still wrestling each other and causing the auroras to form in the Alaskan skies. It's overall another typical tall tale adaptation by Disney, similar to Johnny Appleseed and Pecos Bill, both which appeared in the movie Melody Time, even down to having a bittersweet ending. It has a unique art style which was even carried over into Disney's Sleeping Beauty. The short's main theme song was decent, and Ravenscroft did a fine job voicing Paul. I overall found it decent, 6 out of 10. Noah's Ark, Disney's second attempt at telling the story of Noah's Ark, and Walt's first short made entirely in stop motion. It's safe to say that until Rankin Bass Christmas specials came along, stories told entirely through stop motion were not very common around the 1950s or 60s. Disney had used stop motion in some of their live-action films before as practical effects, but never till now did they make a whole story out of the medium. While I admire Disney's attempt at trying to make something different at the time, I'm sorry to say that I did not care for this short. Can you even call it a short? It drags on. It feels like it goes on for nearly 20 minutes or more. The character and animal designs looked way too arts and craftsy for what's supposed to be a retelling of an old Bible story. Now, I can forgive some stop-motion films for having, really crafty-looking characters, if, the story actually fits it, but for something as simple as a Bible story, I just don't see, all these simple, office wares being used as stop-motion figures. I just don't see it as very charming or clever. I don't know. It just looks kind of cheap and crude, especially coming from Disney. Well, at least their later stop-motion projects were a lot better, especially the ones from Tim Burton and Henry Selick. So I could forgive the crudeness in the character models if it wasn't such a bore. This short just drags on. The worst part of the short is when a hippo's husband is flirting with other animals, dancing with them and stuff like that. And so Noah tries apologizing to the lady hippo for her husband's actions, and we get a long, boring song over how the lady hippo doesn't want to be patronized. Then after that long, boring song, Noah tries telling her that, when her husband's dancing with others, it means he wants you to dance with him. This just felt wrong. It's trying to defend someone who's clearly cheating on their wife. That's just wrong. And then the lady hippo actually falls for it, and it goes nowhere. It doesn't lead to anything. What was the point of this? So overall, the story was boring, the songs were awful. This just felt like a total waste of time. Just watch The Silly Symphony, Father Noah's Ark, or Donald's segment from Fantasia 2000. There are much better Disney adaptations of this old story. 2 out of 10. Goliath II, the first short to use the Xerox system. You can tell this short was being made around the same time as The Jungle Book, not only with its similar art style and setting, but just by the elephant designs alone. They even reused the animation of the elephants crashing into each other, straight from the Jungle Book movie. Another short narrated by Sterling Holloway, as he tells the story of a very tiny elephant named Goliath, who wants to gain respect from his father, the chief of the herd, also named Goliath. Chief Goliath is a terrible dad who sees his son as nothing but a puny disappointment. Goliath's mother is constantly protective of Goliath and has to save him from many dangers. One night, when Goliath is tired of being treated like a baby, he decides to run away and prove that he can live on his own. However, he gets in danger once again, causing his mom to have to once again bail him out. However, upon his rescue, Goliath finds out that leaving the herd is considered treason, and he ends up getting banished from his own herd. After that, a bully mouse comes in and terrorizes all the elephants, all except little Goliath, who isn't afraid of him. The mouse takes offense to that and starts beating up Goliath, and he threatens to throw him into a crocodile's mouth, the same crocodile from Peter Pan, in fact. Goliath turns the tables by overpowering the mouse and threatening to throw him into the croc's mouth instead. The mouse panics and begs for his life, as Goliath lets the mouse go if he promises to leave his herd alone. Of course, this act causes Goliath to be deemed as a hero, as he's proudly welcomed back into the herd, and is even allowed to sit on top of his dad's head. Another Rudolph-like story, but I did enjoy the jungle setting and animation of this short. It does recycle a lot of animation from other Disney movies, but this was made shortly before Walt's death, so Walt Disney died shortly after this short was made, and he died before The Jungle Book was even finished, so with Walt's health getting bad around this time, it's obvious the animators didn't have their leader around as much, and they had to take as many shortcuts as they could to get their cartoons released. Overall, it's a simple but charming cartoon, 7 out of 10. The Saga of Windwagon Smith. I have no idea what even happens in this one. Something about a sailor who rides into the west and he wants to make a wagon that can sail the skies or something. Smith just looks like Roger from 101 Dalmatians, and his love interest looks like a creepy, lifeless doll. What is with those eyes and her stiff animation? Even upon rewatch, this short is just still as forgettable and boring as it was when I first saw it. 2 out of 10. A Symposium of Popular Song, the last standalone short from Walt's lifetime. This feels less like a short and more like a second half to A Wonderful World of Disney special. In fact, it later was repurposed for an episode of said series, during an episode dedicated to stop motion. So, dang it, I really thought I was going to like this one at first, for it's the only theatrical short to star Ludwig von Drake, the host of the NBC rebranding of Walt Disney's Wonderful World of Color series, and I always loved Ludwig von Drake. Sure, he was mostly used as a host for presenting repurposed or redubbed shorts and scenes from Disney's theatrical works, usually trimming out a lot of stuff, but he was still a funny and quirky host, and even made his way to becoming like a Mickey Mouse regular in many Mickey Mouse spin-off shows, and he was a very well-animated and well-voiced character. However, this was not Ludwig's best appearance. That being said, his inclusion was the only slightly tolerable thing for me in this long short. For some reason, Ludwig claims he invented many music stylings as he tries demonstrating the many different styles of music that he himself invented, and most of the short consists of long, boring, annoying, and repetitive stop-motion music videos with creepy-looking characters looping the same animations over and over to songs that just aren't fun or interesting to listen to. I mean, the same could be said about many episodes of Disney's anthology series when Ludwig was introduced. Honestly, Ludwig was like the only real interesting part of those specials, and it kind of makes you wish that we could have just got like a video compilation where it's nothing but all of Ludwig's on-screen appearances, cutting out any of the live-action scenes or documentary scenes, whatever. It would have been cool to get nothing but a compilation of all the scenes that Ludwig appeared on screen or something, but yeah, I don't know. I don't even think Disney Plus has any Ludwig specials available on Disney Plus. I know they have some of the episodes of Walt Disney's anthology series on there, but none of the ones that had Ludwig in it. There are some good ones on there. They were able to recycle old Mickey or Donald shorts pretty cleverly to tell one new story out of it, and some of those were kind of amusing, but it's a shame you can't really watch those officially on Disney Plus. But yeah, the musical segments took up way too much of this short, and Ludwig alone just couldn't save it. Such a disappointing way to wrap up this DVD collection. 2 out of 10. And that was Disney Rarities. It's a mixed bag of shorts for sure, ranging from mediocre to overall pretty decent. It's shocking how barely any of these shorts can be found anywhere else, really giving the name Disney Rarities true to its word, but none of these can even be found on Disney Plus, except for like a Lambert the Sheepish Lion. I think that's the only one that you could find on there. Once again, I would recommend this for die-hard Disney fans, but that's right, Disney doesn't care for their history and would rather see their sales plummet by rehashing the same superior animated films and turning them into critical and financial live-action flops, like the live-action Pinocchio, Little Mermaid, Peter Pan and Wendy, and most likely the upcoming Snow White remake, which is already under a lot of negative press right now. So I really wish Disney would shape up, and it's like the only good thing to come from them recently was the reception over Once Upon a Studio, which surprisingly was supposed to be a short for Disney's Wish, but for some reason they pushed it straight to TV and Disney Plus, and it would have been a real treat to see this on the big screen. And yeah, I don't know why they decided to change it, but maybe it was for the better, because after seeing all the negative reception from Wish, I really don't want to see it anymore. So I'm glad I was actually able to see like what would have been the only good thing to see it, Once Upon a Studio. And so, Once Upon a Studio was a surprisingly decent celebration of Disney's history. Much better than whatever the heck Wish was trying to accomplish. I've seen many people spoil, like, what happens in that movie, and yeah, it sounded like a big load of nothing. So, we appear to be in another dark age of Disney. These past 2 years have been terrible for Disney. Barely any good movies from them. I mean, yeah, you got occasional ones, like Elemental was a surprisingly decent hit. But overall, just too many negative hits after another, and so Disney's sales have definitely been declining these past few years, and so hopefully, just like the previous dark ages in the 80s, maybe we'll soon get another movie like Who Framed Roger Rabbit that'll lead us into another Renaissance age of animation. One can dream. Well, that's all I have to show for now. Thank you for watching, see you next time, and have a great day.